Hello dear students, welcoming you back to our English class, that is English for class 7. In the previous class, we have started a story called Expert Detectives, right? We have done half of the story. We have completed the first part and we still have a little bit of the first part to be covered. And today, after finishing that, we will continue with the second part, okay? We will have a quick recap of what we have done yesterday. In our previous class, we have seen that Mr. Nath was a man who was the neighbor of the two kids named Nishat and Maya. And Maya was very suspicious of this man because he was a very thin looking man with scars on his face. And she suspected that these scars are because he had to escape from the shootout, or maybe he got burned while the police burned his house. Though Nishat had been arguing with the sister to tell him that the mother told that this was her patient and that he was a very polite man. These are some things that they have been discussing about. We also got to know that Nishat went downstairs to talk with Mr. Ramesh, who works at the restaurant, and got some facts about this Mr. Nath. And he was excited after he got to know about all these things, okay? He got to know that he was a person who does not pay much attention to what he eats. He regularly eats 2 chapatis, dal, and a vegetable. That's what he eats. Morning, evening, he eats the same thing. And in the morning, he will have 1 cup of tea, another cup of tea in the afternoon. He does not go for other varieties of food. That's what we have heard. And this boy thought that Mr. Nath was a very poor man who cannot afford his food. And you also will remember the incident when he went to give him a chocolate, but this man did not allow him to enter his room, or he was not called in. Instead, he just asked him whether he lost another marble. Because the first time he went to his room, he lost a marble and then he found that marble from his room. And the second time, when he went there, Mr. Nath just thought that the boy came again to find another lost marble, but this time it was for a different cause. And that cause was to give him a chocolate, okay? Because he thought that he was hungry, it had been haunting him every time, it had been in his mind. And at that moment, the sister called Maya was not at home. She went out and the boy went all alone. Maya was disappointed when she got to know that her brother went to Mr. Nath's house and came back without any investigation. She really wanted to investigate the trunk, right? There was a trunk, I told you, and she thought that this trunk would be full of treasures, jewelries, gold, silver, and money. She thought that his box would be full of all those precious things, and she really wanted to make an inquiry into that, but they did not get the opportunity. But when her brother went up to this house, to his room, she thought that he would have inquired all those things or made an investigation, but he did not do so. Why? Because Mr. Nath did not call him inside, isn't it? And she was still not very satisfied because though they had got some information from Mr. Ramesh, the person who works at the restaurant, they were not fully satisfied with the information that they got. They got to know that he had a visitor almost every Sunday and that lunch and meals were served for this man by Mr. Ramesh. But they were also on the suspicion again because if he was a poor man and if he was a bad man, he would not be so generous to Mr. Ramesh, isn't it? He would not be very generous because Ramesh told that he gets tips, right? He gets tips generously from this man. And if he was a bad person, he would not be so generous. That was one thing that they were getting confused, okay? And in Expert Detectives Part 2, we are going to see an unexpected holiday. Unexpected holiday. We all like that, isn't it? All of a sudden, maybe your teachers are planning to have a meeting and then you get an unexpected holiday. That's what we all like in our students' life. And so you will see an unexpected holiday, and that holiday will be used to find facts. And then at some point of time, the siblings will even have arguments, okay? And then you will see that one of them would want to be a friend and the other is against that idea because being a friend with a crook would be a dangerous thing. That's what they thought, and this is the structure of how our story, that is Expert Detectives Part 2, will go on. One day, after the summer vacation, it was monsoon, okay? After the summer vacation, school were supposed to reopen. That day, as they were dressed and they were ready to go out for school, it started raining heavily. And then all of a sudden, they could hear the rolling thunders and then flashes of lightnings. You can imagine that. And even some elders, not only the youngsters, but even some elders are scared of heavy rain, right? Heavy rain where there will be lightnings, thunders. All these appear very scary, and so it was a day like that, and not anyone could move. Okay, the traffic on the road could not move because the streets were flooded with water. As we live in hilly places, we do not know much about floods, but we have heard and we have seen in TVs and the news channels about how people in other parts of the country and in other parts of the world suffer because of the floods during the rainy seasons. And so it was a very rainy day, and the streets were all flooded. All of a sudden, the school and everyone has to declare an unexpected holiday. So these two kids, even Maya and Nishat, could not go to their school. They have to come back. And Maya thought that this is a very good opportunity for them to make use of it, okay? And we do not know what they were planning, but Maya thought to herself that she will not waste this day that she got all of a sudden. And then she started to work on. There was a desk in their room, okay? A desk, a table. And so she sat on the table and she started to find out some facts about Mr. Nat, while the younger brother, that is Nishat, was just lying down with the tummy, that means the stomach lying towards the bed, and then he cupped his chin. You know what is a chin, right? He cupped his chin with both the hands. You also do that. Sometimes when you want to read and you are feeling a little lazy, what you do is you place your book on the bed and then you will cup your chins with both the hands. You will lie upside down and then that's how you read. And this young boy Nishat was reading a comic, okay? He was reading a comic, a story, and then the sister was just sitting at the desk trying to find out all the facts about Mr. Nat. And then she started writing like this. Fact number 1, okay? She will find 9 points altogether. You can have a look at your book if you want to look at it. You will find that in page number 89 and then the following pages. The first thing that she wrote about Mr. Nat was, she wrote like this. His name is Mr. Nat, and then she gave a question mark there, okay? Why a question mark? Because she thought that this might not even be his real name. And then after reading all the points together, she began to read out to her brother. And then her brother was listening. As she reads out, fact number 1, his name is Mr. Nat and he stays alone. And this is what she wrote. And here, even the younger brother was a little suspicious. She said, is Mr. Nat his real name? So they are not very sure about this. Because if he was to be a crook on the run, obviously he will not be using a name, a real name that he had been using, his official name. And so they put a question mark there. She began to read out the points one after another, okay? And one point, fact number 2, and it goes on till fact number 9. One point that she wrote was, he has a visitor almost every Sunday, and he is a spectacled man. You know what is spectacles, right? He wears spectacles, and then he was a fat man, a fair-looking fat man, and also tall. That's what she wrote. And she wrote this because she thought that this person was his accomplice, as we have learned in the previous section, right? In the previous part, we learned that he gets a visitor every Sunday. And then one thing that she wrote was, another fact that she wrote about Mr. Nat was that he always orders food from Ramesh. He pays him on time and also tips him generously. And there is another question mark for both of them. Because if he were to be a bad man, he would not be tipping this person who works at the restaurant. That is Mr. Ramesh. very well, because if he is not a good man, he would also not think of for the persons who are working to earn their daily lives. Okay, and so this is what they were thinking. And here the little boy that is 7 also interrupted, saying that if he was a bad man, he will not be doing this. But Maya was very critical. Okay, she makes judgment every time. Maybe it's because he wants to bribe Mr. Ramesh. You know what is bribing? When you see, in our simple context, I'm not going to talk about the higher levels, what you do at school. If you have done something wrong at school and one of your friend knows about it, you have to do things to please him, isn't it? So that that friend would not report about your bad or misconduct to your teachers. And so this Mr. Nath might be bribing Mr. Ramesh because he knew something about his past. Okay, she was fully of the suspicion that he had really done something wrong, and there are some people on the lookout for him. And so she was not positive at this. She also stated out that it might be because he wanted to bribe Ramesh, who already knew something about him. Okay, and so she did not think that he was really a good man. These are some facts that she had been reporting about Mr. Nat. And then after saying all those things, she also remembered that he had a scar on his face, a mark. Okay, he had a scar on his face, and that could be possibly while he was trying to escape from the police. As the mother said, he was a person who with burned marks, but she also did not take this thing positively. She began to suspect that it was all because he had to escape a burning house, which the police had put it on fire to bring him out of his house. These are some things that she had been recording. There are so many facts that she recorded about this Mr. Nat, okay? And after recording all these things, she read out to her brother. But the brother did not really believe into all these things. In fact, he was just arguing back in favor of Mr. Nat, okay? I would like to read out one point to you. If you're still with your book, I will not be reading everything, but there is one point that you will also see. Fact number 3 is he doesn't talk to anyone. Remember? He doesn't talk to anyone and is mannerless. Okay? And another fact is the tenants at Shankar house say he is mad, strange, and unfriendly. These are some facts. And she is not just writing it randomly. She gathered this, and these are facts that she had heard from others. Okay? And then fact number 4 says that he doesn't receive any letters. I want you to ponder on this. He doesn't receive any letters. Why? Because a person who is on the hideout, okay, who is hiding, will never reveal their address to others. And unless you reveal your address, there will not be any letters coming to you. And so this was another plus point to the suspicion that she had. And also she heard from others, the person living in that house, that he was not very friendly, and they thought that he's mad, okay? He is not a really stable person. That's what she had heard from the neighbors. These are some points that she had been gathering. And then she knew that Mr. Nad had been living in this house for a year. Imagine living in a neighborhood for 1 year and you don't have any friends except the waiter at the restaurant. What will you feel? And it is also partially right for the girl to suspect that he was not a good man because he was not friendly, he doesn't talk to anyone. And one more fact that she gathered about this from the boy who was told by Mr. Ramesh is that he always have a visitor. We already knew about that. But one thing about this visitor is that his visitor talks so much, unlike Mr. Nat, okay? When he goes upstairs to serve food to these two fellows, what what Ramesh experienced is that Mr. Nat does not talk at all, okay? He was a very calm man, a very solemn man, and then his fellow visitor, his friend, talks a lot. He will be very friendly and he talks so much. That is one fact he knew about this man, and then he told it to Nishat. And so these are some facts that she had been writing. because she wants to work like a real detective. She wants to gather every bit of information which will be pieced together. She wants to piece everything together and come out with an outcome which will help her in her findings. Okay, these are some things that she had find. And another one is number 7. The kids in Shankar house and even some of the grown-ups are scared of him. See, normally we are not scared of a good man, right? The kids in his neighborhood and the ones, even the elders, thinks that he is a scary man. And so these are some facts that is adding up more and more to her suspicion about this Mr. Nat. And the last point that she wrote about Mr. Nat is that food and tea are taken to his room by Ramesh from the restaurant downstairs. He doesn't care what he eats, pays his bill immediately, and tips well. That ends my list. Have I forgotten anything, 7? And then she asked the question to her brother, but the brother did not really give much interest in that. He just responded by saying, "Poor man, he might be very lonely. He doesn't have friends." And so he said that we should be friends with him. Okay, we should befriend him. Maybe he is feeling very lonely because he does not have any companion. Okay, this is what he suggested. But Maya did not agree to it. How can you feel like that? Okay, it's very dangerous for you to befriend a crook, because both of you may end up in the prison, in the jail. That's what she said to her brother. But the brother said maybe nobody tried to befriend him, and that was the reason why he was lonely. Yes, that can be true, isn't it? Sometimes we keep judging a person. We keep judging a person without really getting to know the details or really getting to know what that person is like. And then the boy said it might be because nobody tried to befriend him. We should be the one to take steps, okay? We should be the one to take steps and to become friendly with him so that he will also feel good. And you know how lonely it feels when you don't have any friends. For that matter, at school, you can imagine the recess bell comes. Everyone is happily rushing out of the rooms with their friends. But if you were a newcomer in that school and you don't know anybody, the recess would be more boring than the other classes. Some of you will be experiencing this right now, okay? You have joined a new school and then you don't have any friends. Your friends are also eagerly waiting for the recess bell to ring, but for you that is a scary time because you will be left all alone, and then you know your friends will look down on you because you don't have any friends. You are just sitting there all alone. Those 30 minutes would be too long for you. The 35 minutes classes would just be okay for you, but for you to spend 30 minutes all alone would be so boring for you. And that is what exactly Nishat felt about this man. And so he wanted to befriend Mr. Nat, whereas the sister was always disagreeing with him. And she said that it would be too dangerous. And if you are going to be like this, how can we find about this man? That's what the sister said. The sister almost hit the brother out of anger because the brother was not cooperating with her at all. But the brother said, I would cooperate with you only if you leave all this suspicion, because they do not know anything. They did not go and interact with Mr. Nat. They were just assuming that he was a crook, and they were just assuming that he was a bad man. But who knows? He might be a sick person, because we know that the mother is this man's doctor. He might be battling a very difficult sickness, okay? He might be going through physical pains, and that might be the reason why he does not even come out. When you are unhealthy, what do? You don't even want to talk, isn't it? You might be the most talkative student in the class, but when the day you are sick, you don't want others to come near you and disturb you. You just want to keep resting, or maybe lie on your desk and rest the whole day. You can't wait for the time that you will go home and rest on your bed. And so this person might be a person like that. They were just judging him because he stays inside his room the whole day. He doesn't go out for work. He has enough money. But the person who comes and visits him every Sunday might be a relative who comes to give him money, who comes to provide whatever he needs, isn't it? So what that is the end of our story. But what I want all of you to learn from this is, it is also very risky. It is also very risky to assume that a person is bad just by looking at at how he behaves, because if you want to know something, you have to really get in contact with them, get in touch with them, and get to know about them. Then only they will open up. Like Nishat suggested, maybe he does not have a friend because nobody tried to approach him and he was a sickly person. We never know somebody's problems unless we really get to them and talk with them. Then only we will realize. If you have a friend, a neighbor who is like that, instead of trying to be detectives like this girl, okay, you should always come forward and get to know. Then only you will end up getting the real fact about that person whom you want to know. And with this, we are going to conclude our class. Thank you so much for listening to me patiently.